Hello and welcome to another AIC video. So I'm really excited for this one. I just picked this up a few weeks ago and I really haven't had a chance to look at it until the last couple days. I was traveling out of town for a vacation and then unfortunately a funeral, and so I'm finally getting back to it and having a chance to kind of dig into this Compaq Presario. So this is from the late 90s. It is running a Pentium 2 at 300 megahertz. I believe the model number is 5037. But the reason why I bought this is back when I was 16 years old, I got my first job working in a pizza place as a cook, and I made pizzas, and I hated that job. And so a friend of mine helped me get a job at a place where he was working at. That was a software development company. And basically, they hired high schoolers to come in and basically be data ingesters. So they did stuff with demographics. And so they get all this raw data from all these different companies, and they'd have to convert it into files that their system could use. And so they had programs and scripts and things. I even helped write some of those scripts while I was there to ingest that data into our environment. And I had a whole office of like 10 of these, each on their own little computer stand with monitor keyboard, and I go from computer to computer to computer to computer, ingesting that data and getting it onto our network for our software development team to then use for the product that we sold. So and at the time, this was in 1999, the year 2000, and they paid me $10 an hour, which was more than a lot of adults at the time were getting paid. It was a really good job for a high schooler, and I could go after hours because I was just doing data processing. I could work after school, on the weekends, things like that, since I wasn't customer facing or anything like that. So they allowed me to work when I was available and paid me really, really well. And it was a great job, and I'm really grateful for them. And so I have been looking for one of these for forever because it brings such nostalgia for me. And I finally found this one, and I probably way overpaid for it because it does this. The door actually works on this. You look at these, and 99% of them, this door is busted or missing entirely. It also has the plastic door down here that covers the USB. I want to say these are like 1.1 ports. They're not even USB. And they might even just be USB 1, but they're not USB 2. I know that. And they're the only ones in the back. So it has the doors. They work. I found these for a lot cheaper, but again, they're missing the pieces. Now, this is pretty yellowed. You can tell that difference here when I open from here to here. And I love that it has the stickers, but they too have changed color. This is supposed to be blue, and this is red originally. So yeah, pretty yellowed stuff there. But what I did is I actually wanted to use this, and it came with Windows 98. In fact, it even came with the recovery media for Windows 98. And when I first bought this, I was like, well, what I'll probably do is put a modern system into it, because it's probably not going to work, or at least work very well, because it's so old. There's the era of blown capacitors. The hard drive's probably bad. This is the original 6 gig hard drive. And I powered it on, and it is perfect, and it works flawlessly. But I'm not a huge fan of Windows 98. I used Windows 95. I kind of skipped over 98 for a lot of stuff, and then I used Windows XP. And so a lot of the older software stuff I have is more compatible with Windows XP than it is with 98. So I thought I'd go ahead and throw XP on here and just see how it runs. And it ran like trash. So bad. And part of the reason for that is this only has 64 megabytes of RAM, not 64 gigs, not only 64 megabytes of RAM, which is the bare minimum for Windows XP. So I went out and I bought 2 DIMMs of 128 megabytes each. So I'm going to upgrade this from 64 to 256 megabytes. And then I bought this adapter, which should be able to allow me to plug in a SATA SSD So we should be able to get storage and memory upgrade on here and see if it will run Windows XP. That's what I'd prefer to have on here and get going. So I'll go ahead and upgrade. We'll plug it in, install Windows XP again on it, because obviously we're going to be installing it to a new drive. I installed it to this 6 gig drive, and it was so slow, but this drive's so quiet. It sounds like it's brand new. I don't think this computer was used much, if at all. I think it just mostly sat. All the ports are not, like when you plug stuff in and out, you can tell that you're not plugging stuff in and out that's been plugged in and out a bunch before. It just is a really nice condition. It does have one scratch here on the top, but that's all right. I'll live with that. The rest of it's really good. So let's go ahead. I will install those, the hardware, and we will see about getting the software installed. All right, so we have the SSD installed and the RAM installed. I did have to remove the power supply to do that. Just tilt it up out of the way after unscrewing the 4 screws on the back. We have the Pentium 2 processor right here. Like I said, this is a 300 megahertz model. I was expecting it to be a 233, so I'm kind of happy that it is a little bit faster at 300. The next step up, they made some changes. I think this is the fastest CPU that'll fit off this board. I'd have to have a different board for a faster, for the 333 or 366 megahertz version. I was going to screw this in, but I don't actually have the screws that fit those holes. I do have them, but I'm packing up. We're hoping to move next year, and so I've been going through and packing things up, and I thought I'd left the screws out, but I must have packed them. So I have them. They're just in a box somewhere. I'm not going to go dig those out. So it's just going to sit here for a while. It's not going to hurt anything. I did leave the original hard drive plugged in. For now, it's not going to hurt anything to leave it plugged in. I did have to unplug the CD-ROM drive to be able to pull the power supply. I want to kind of go over the ports on the back of this real quick. Sorry for the shaky camera. We have, where's my finger? A serial port. We have a VGA port down here. This is like a special display adapter, so you can hook up multiple displays. I don't have the adapter for this. It wasn't long lived, and I'm not going to hook up multiple displays. We have a parallel port here. We have our PS2 ports, and then we have our audio ports here. If we go back around to the front, we have here on the front a gamepad or joystick port, and then 2 USB ports. So these were pretty revolutionary when this came out. Oh, there's the number, yeah, 5037. These were pretty revolutionary when this came out, so that's why they're not on the back. I thought about throwing in like a whatchamacallit, a ATX board in here, but looking at it, the way this is designed, it would have to fit in this square here, and I don't know if something would. I'd have to do some measuring and see, just because there is not a lot of clearance obviously behind this cage here, and it is pretty integral to this system. So yeah, if I decide to upgrade this to a more modern system, maybe an ITX board or something in here, I don't know. But for now, we're going to leave it stock other than the RAM and the storage. Let's go ahead and button it back up and start installing some Windows XP. Alright, so I have been going at it for probably almost an hour messing with this, and this computer does not like this. It will not boot with this installed. Even without a drive plugged in, it freaks out and does not like this. So I don't know what the problem is. I tried 2 different SSDs as well, and then I just had this on there and it didn't like it. This is a drive that was coming out, and I thought maybe I could upgrade it. It is a 40 gigabyte at 7200 RPM. I have the Seagate Barracuda, which is an 80 gigabyte at 7200 RPM. I'm going to go ahead and throw this one in, even though it's the same speed as this. The additional capacity would be nice. We'll see if it likes this drive at all. If not, I might have to go back to this drive and just live with a 40 gigabyte spinny disk. If anybody has any experience with this kind of adapter here, and can give me any suggestions on how to get it going in an older system like this, I'd appreciate it. I don't know if I need to select a specific jumper setting or take the jumper off entirely. I'm trying to set it just cable select because the cable is labeled drive 0 and drive 1. I'm setting the hard drive as drive 1 and the CD-ROM drive as drive 0. I unplug the 5¼ inch drive entirely. Show you that up here. It's not plugged in at all. So I'm just going to have the CD-ROM drive and the hard drive plugged in here to get it up and going. So that's what we're going to do next, is put in this 80 gig Barracuda drive and see what we got. Alright, forgive my mess of a desk and office. As I said before, I am working on moving, so it's all kind of blown apart as I'm working on it. But we now have Windows XP installing, and we will get that going here. I won't record this full process because it's going to take like 3+ hours to get it installed. One thing that will make you grateful for modern operating systems is reinstalling Windows XP 2 or 3 times on a system. It is ridiculously slow. That CD-ROM drive is sounding a bit rough, so I may be replacing it. I don't want a DVD writer anyways, if I have one, or at least a DVD drive that can also write CDs if I'm doing it. So right now I think it's just like a 24x or something CD-ROM drive, maybe 32x CD-ROM drive, something like that, but maybe something a little bit faster and that has DVD and writing capabilities. Anyways, I will follow up once we have Windows XP installed, see if it actually runs better with the upgraded memory. I'm sad that we don't have the SSD in here. I will look into options for that. I'm thinking that those drives were just too big, maybe larger support, or just even though I wiped the formatting on them, somehow formatted in a way that this computer didn't like, or I needed a different adapter. So, ooh, that's not good. Well, it looks like I get to do some troubleshooting. I will be back. Alright, so we got it up and going. I did take a few days to actually finish this project up. Part of the reason being, I was really struggling trying to figure out why things weren't working. I went inside and my wife's like, "You don't look very good." I went and took my temperature. Actually, I had a fever of 102. I picked up a really nasty cold traveling for a funeral right before I came back and was working on this. And I was super sick and I had to take 3 days to just sleep. So my brain wasn't working because it was cooking itself. So once I started feeling better, I got back at it, and it took me 2 seconds to kind of figure out what I was doing and what I wanted to do with the system. So first and foremost, I went ahead and unplugged the this 5¼ inch hard drive. I decided not to use it at all in this build. It is quite rare and very difficult to replace if I wanted to replace it. It's too small capacity for what I wanted to use anyways. It's at only 6 gigs, which is like 5.5 usable. And so I decided to unplug it, not use it, but leave it in here for originality. Next, I want to upgrade the CD-ROM drive, but I couldn't find one that I wanted to buy at this time, so I'm going to find something else out. And I did go ahead and install that 80 gig Barracuda 7200 RPM drive in here. It did have a 40 gig 7200 RPM, but I figure I'd double capacity since that's the only drive I'm going to have in here. One of the problems I was having, it's going to be kind of hard to see back in there. Let me see if I can brighten that up at all. You can see the 2 IDE drives. So you have your floppy drive here, you have your IDE 1 or 0 depending on your motherboard, and your IDE 2. And so what was happening is the 5¼ inch was being plugged into the IDE 1, and then the hard drive I was trying to install Windows on and the CD-ROM drive were plugged into the IDE 1 or 2, the second slot. I believe it's 1 and 2 on this computer, on this motherboard. And then I was doing cable select, and it was just getting all sorts of confused. And so I unplugged that 5¼ inch drive and plugged in the CD-ROM drive and the hard drive I'm using into that first slot there. Set it to cable select, and on the cable, the last drive in the cable, which is now the hard drive, is cable 0. It's labeled on the cable, and then drive 1, or the second drive, is now the CD-ROM drive, and that's what got the system to recognize the drives correctly. I still have a problem where the CMOS battery is dead on this. I don't actually know where it is to replace it. So that's a bit of a problem. Not a big issue. I'm not too worried about it. It's not going to leak. I think it's just a CR22. It's probably behind this cage here that I would have to remove to get to it. I'm just not willing to do that right now. So every time I unplug it, plug it back in, it does lose time, which, again, not a big deal since I'm not really using this for anything. Let's go ahead and power it up. I have it plugged into my, I got this television from Goodwill about a year ago, and I love it. It has 2 HDMI ports, VGA, component and composite video in. It has like all the ports I could possibly want on it. It's been great. So, gotta flick the switch in the back. Come on. Did this get loose? Alright, just a second. Let me figure out where it got unplugged. Alright, that's on me. I unplugged this. I think I was unplugging something else. I have too many things plugged in to my power brick over there. Go ahead and turn it on now. Let it boot up. You hear that hard drive spinning up, maybe? Very quiet. See it boot up with Compaq. And then I found this keyboard on eBay. It was new old stock for $5. I picked this mouse up on Amazon. It's a PS2 mouse, but it's infrared. Works great. It wasn't very expensive either. That way I'm not having to do anything funny with adapters or anything for the keyboard and mouse. I was having some problems with that. So. Alright, and there we go. Now, I don't have the disc in here right now, but I have episode 1 Racer. It's probably going to give me an error. But yeah, it's working. It's working great. It's running pretty okay with Windows XP. I was a bit worried that the CPU wouldn't be enough. Being that it is 300 megahertz, it's kind of the bottom end of specs for Windows XP. But it seems to run just fine. I might go back and install 98 on it later. I may keep XP on it for now just because that's the operating system I'm most familiar with. But for what I'm going to do is button it back up, put the cover back on. I've left it off because every time I'd have to go in here, it's such a pain to get its cover on and off, though it does look best with it on. This still works. I'm glad I didn't break this getting in and out a bunch of times. I was a little worried about that. And then I would like to replace the CD-ROM drive with something that maybe is a DVD writer or something. I'll have to see what my options are for that. It'd be nice if it was still this gray color, though black or even white might look okay. I don't know. I'll see what's available out there on the market. If you have a suggestion, let me know. Alright, now that we have its case on, it's looking nice and sharp. I honestly don't even know what to do with it. For a while there, I was thinking of throwing a modern motherboard in here, just using the classic look of the case. With the design of the case, it would require a lot more modification than I might be comfortable with on this case. So I'm not sure how much I want to do that, especially with a system that works perfect and works great. So if you have any thoughts, comments, or concerns, if you have any suggestions for me, more importantly, of what I can do with this system now that I have it and it's running, let me know down in the comments section down below. Looking forward to hearing what your suggestions are. Anyways, thank you again for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.